Then we can do Q&A and things as well. That's what people want to do. The theme being reconnecting with nature, kind of a really peculiar concept, isn't it? And I don't know that any other culture anywhere in the world would even have had to ask itself about a question like that. It's a really appropriate theme for today, though. So thanks for inviting me to speak and have some opinions. Who here is from WA? Who's kind of local? Okay. Who is from somewhere else in Australia? Welcome. Hands up way out. And is any? Yeah. Okay. That is awesome. Well, thank you for coming all the way out to the west for this amazing event. And it's really good to know that you're all out there doing amazing work. I'm not going to assume that anybody read that crazy essay that you mentioned, so I'm going to kind of go through some of this stuff a little bit from scratch, and some of it's a bit stream of consciousness, and apologise for that. I don't have any kind of organised theory of the world or change or how to fix everything. I think, like most of us, I'm just trying to do my bit and try to figure out how to be most effective given the context of the things that are going on around us. One of the things, if we're going to talk about reconnecting with nature, let's ask ourselves about how we do that. One of the reasons why we acknowledge pretty much at every formal event or occasion, we acknowledge the Aboriginal people, the custodians of the place where we're standing. In this case, the traditional country, the Wodjil people who've been here. If we're going to spend a bit of time today talking about cities and nature as though they were different things, and hopefully by the end we will get a bit of a sense about how they're not as distinct as we might imagine. Is it the Aboriginal people who cultivated and loved and looked after the country that we're meeting on today have been here for roughly 200 times, at least 200 times, as long as the city has. The city was founded by colonial occupation in 1829. The Aboriginal mob, the way archaeologists tell it anyway, have continuously inhabited this place for at least 40,000 years. That's back into the Pleistocene, that's 2 ice ages. That's a tremendously long period of time, and a lot of that knowledge and understanding and custodianship ethic around country and the importance of country and language was really disregarded and ignored by the occupiers and devalued in a way, such that not many people who live here even know how to say hello in the language that prevailed in this part of the world for at least 40,000 years. If we're going to reconnect with nature, then one of the things that we could usefully do is spend a bit more time listening to people whose understanding of nature was not as some kind of separate external thing that you could study objectively, but as very old cultural traditions from all around the world, something that was intrinsic to us. It's not some separate thing that we need to get to know. It is us, and it kind of owns us. If we're going to reconnect with nature, one of the first things we better get our heads around is that this is the time that ecologists are calling the 6th massive extinction. That in the entire history of life, since it kind of formed up from soft-shelled or soft-bodied animals 540 or 50 million years ago, there have been 5 episodes of colossal extinction that are kind of painted in the fossil record, if you care to look, where huge proportions of the Earth's life went to the wall, sometimes in very, very brief periods of geological time. There have been 5 of these mass extinctions. The cause of each of them, given that they happened so long ago, isn't necessarily immediately clear. 65 million years ago, it was believed that a comet or a large asteroid smacked into the planet and threw us effectively into a really brutal ice age, which took out the dinosaurs, created that space for the mammals and the birds to arise. The end Permian extinction is not very well understood, but 90 to 95% of the world's forms of life went to the wall. And it is quite sobering when you think back, I guess, that through no fault of their own, those species are just no longer with us. In particular rock formations all over the world, there's trilobites, and then suddenly they're gone through no fault of theirs. So the first thing that we notice when we reconnect with nature is that it's in something of an emergency, that paleontologists and those from the kind of white fellow cultural side who study things in that way are saying this is the 6th mass extinction. And rather than being initiated by a comet or by an ice age, it's being engineered inadvertently by one particular species and a particular form of economic accumulation. So the second thing when we reconnect with nature is just to be aware that she's kind of brutal, that you can wind up in the fossil record just by not playing by ecological rules that have prevailed since effectively the beginning of time. The engineering that I speak of is being done obviously in some profoundly simple ways, partly just by erasing ecosystems to make space for farms and for cities and for mines, that you can cause localised extinctions just by obliterating the underlying ecosystems that support these forms of life. Changing the thermal balance of the atmosphere and the ocean, subtle, not super well understood even today, although it was theorised in the 1880s and 1890s that carbon dioxide was acting as that kind of thermostat and was modifying the temperature of the world. And eating down the food chain, filling the ocean with plastics, mining operations, treating renewable resources as though they were non-renewable and mining them to the edge of extinction, whether they be fish or forests. These are ways in which this extinction is being engineered, and that is one of the first things that you notice if you're in a mind to reconnect with nature. But it's difficult to do, as you said in your intro, it's very difficult to do when we're engaged in this extraordinary process of cultural distancing that we can't necessarily see happening if we're cocooned inside all of the time, and everything is mediated. Transport, we wrap ourselves in shells of aluminium and glass and steel. Transport is mediated that way. Food is mediated. All of the mass murder of 70 billion animals a year is all conducted way out of our line of sight. Just food just arrives in plastic on the shelves, mediated. Air is pumped in and cooled to an appropriate temperature. The air that we breathe is mediated. Contact with each other is increasingly becoming mediated through digital networks. And so, these are long-run processes that have been set in train long before any of us were born, but they come to seem normal after a while, even though they would have seemed profoundly strange to most of the cultures that came before us. Although you could argue that we have been mediating our relationship with nature since we first put up walls, since the first settler societies and those that started conducting agriculture, and certainly Aboriginal mobs as well, were doing precisely the same things when they were, rather than relying on teeth and fingernails, were crafting spears and axes since time immemorial. But that mediation, I think, goes a long way to explaining how the destruction of the biosphere and the underlying ecosystems that keep us alive have become normalised over a period of time, where it's considered a bit weird. So the Greens are polling 15 or 16% nationally at the moment, which is a bit of a record high for us. That's 85% of the population who don't think that the issues that we prioritise and try and put front and centre are as important as other things. And they're very welcome to those views. That's a democracy, and it's great that that's how it operates. But it is seen as a bit odd to, be a tree hugger, or to be taking direct action to try and stop a freeway or a uranium mine. We're treated sometimes as right at the margins or as being a bit extreme. But that ecological destruction being normalised is actually now kind of baked into all our experiences just about from the moment we're born. For the generation that came through the Cold War, the background experience in the back of your mind was at any point the Soviet Union and the United States could just incinerate the planet in military exchange, and kids were taught that from the 1950s onwards. For our generation, at least since 1992, is when the world's nations signed up to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Every one of us has grown up against the backdrop of, we're cooking the place. We're throwing the Earth into a new geological age. Maybe our grandkids will have to redraw the maps. And that's our background normalisation, if you like, of the extraordinary damage that's been set in train. And the thing that's most intrinsically baked in, I suppose, to our economic discourse at least, is one of growth. And that is where I think we can start to get a bit of a grip on how all these different things are connected. Any system that is growing at a geometric rate inside a finite system is going to hit the wall at some point. So anybody who studied economics or watches those quasi-incomprehensible reports on what the market did at the end of every news report, who's got a big share portfolio? Maybe someone do. Like some of you maybe have shares. Why do they put that shit on at the end of the news every night? I wonder what happened to the gold price today. Like, who fucking cares? Like, it's there at the end of every single news bulletin just to let you know what the investment community is putting up with and how their oil futures and everything are going. And the number one kind of headline indicator that really rules them all is the growth. It's how fast is the economy growing compared to how fast it was growing last year. So 3% annual growth is considered not too hot, where you would need to push interest rates up to cool things down, and not too cold, where you would need to drop interest rates. Kind of about right, you know, the Goldilocks 3%. But what the 3% annual growth of the economy implies is that your economy will be twice as large in 25 years, it will take. Once a generation, the material throughput, the physical size of your economy is meant to be twice the size as it was a generation ago. And that's what 3% annually compounding growth buys you. So consider this little thought experiment for a second. In the year 1904, the whole world's economy was mining, crushing, shipping, smelting about 94 odd million tonnes of iron ore. A little bit over 90 million tonnes, and that's more than 100 years ago. By 2030, it'll be 3 billion tonnes, if that kind of doubling, 3%, doubling. So you've had the population between 1904 and 2030 will have expanded fourfold, but that material throughput will have expanded 30-fold. And that's what that curve, that increasing rate of geometric growth, is what's doing so much harm. It's not that we're even growing at the natural rate of population growth. It's the exoskeleton, it's the technology, and it's the built form, and it's the transport, it's all the piping and all the conduits and all the plastic and all the glass. That's what's doing all the growing. That's what's growing at 3%, and that's what is erasing ecosystems and changing the thermal balance of the atmosphere before our eyes. So how to reconnect? Well, I would come back to say, well, Aboriginal people already did. So the place where we live and every millimetre of this old continent was mapped and named and known. It was known very precisely how the ecosystem functioned. So there's a very good place to start, and we've already got there first. Go and see a clearfell. Who's been involved in forest campaigning and seen what it looks like when ecosystems are being destroyed right before your eyes? It's a generation of crew who came through those movements who I think had post-traumatic stress. It is beyond heartbreaking to see ecosystems dismantled that you were trying